The words cut through me like a razor blade dipped in poison. "You're not family to us." I stood there in that hospital room, my arms still outstretched to hold my first grandchild, a baby girl born just 6 hours earlier, and my daughter-in-law Amber looked me dead in the eye with a smile that could freeze hell itself and said those 5 words that would change everything. Around me, Amber's family cooed and laughed, passing baby Grace from person to person like she was a trophy they had won. Amber's mother held her. Amber's father held her. Amber's sister, her brother, even her cousin who I had never seen before in my life. They all got to hold my granddaughter. But not me. Not Walter Washington, who had raised my son Daniel alone for 32 years after his mother died when he was just 3 months old. Not the man who had sacrificed everything so his boy could have a good life. I wasn't family. My name is Walter Washington. I'm 68 years old. And what I'm about to tell you is a story about betrayal so deep it nearly destroyed me, and revenge so perfect it restored my faith that God sees everything and justice always comes, even when you think all hope is lost. But to understand how we got to that hospital room, to that moment of complete and utter humiliation, you need to know the whole story. You need to know about the 40 years of struggle and sacrifice that led to my son looking at the floor while his wife treated me like garbage in front of a room full of strangers. I was born in 1956 in Birmingham, Alabama, the youngest of 7 children in a family so poor we sometimes went to bed hungry. My daddy worked at the steel mill when there was work, and my mama cleaned houses for white families in Mountain Brook, making barely enough to keep us fed. I learned early that if you were black and poor in Alabama, you had to work twice as hard just to stay in the same place. I was smart though, smarter than most. I graduated high school at the top of my class in 1974, got a scholarship to Alabama State University, studied engineering because I wanted to build things, wanted to make my mark on the world. That's where I met Rose Washington, a young woman from Montgomery who was studying education and had a heart bigger than the sky. We fell in love hard and fast, the way young people do when they think they have all the time in the world. We got married in 1979 in a small ceremony at my parents' church, with 30 people in attendance and a reception that cost $73. I wore a suit I borrowed from my brother. Rose wore a white dress her sister had sewn. Our wedding rings cost $62 total from a jewelry store that was going out of business. But when I slipped that band on her finger, I felt like the richest man in the world. We moved to Atlanta in 1980 because I got a job with an engineering firm, and Rose found work teaching 3rd grade at an elementary school in Southwest Atlanta. We lived in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment in Mechanicsville, saving every penny we could because we wanted to buy a house, wanted to build a life, wanted to have children. Daniel was born in 1982, and he was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. Perfect brown skin, big dark eyes that looked at me like I hung the moon, tiny fingers that would wrap around mine and hold on like he never wanted to let go. I was so proud of that boy, used to carry him around the neighborhood showing him off to anyone who would look. "This is my son," I would say, my voice full of pride. "He's going to do great things, going to be somebody important." We were happy, poor but happy. I worked long hours at the firm. Rose taught during the day and graded papers at night while Daniel slept. We were building something, a foundation for our family's future. And then Rose died. It was April 1983, 3 months after Daniel's first birthday. She had complications from an undiagnosed heart condition, collapsed at school while teaching her class. They said she died before the ambulance even arrived. Didn't suffer. But I suffered. Lord, how I suffered. I was 26 years old, a widower with a baby, living in a city where I barely knew anyone, with no family nearby and no idea how I was going to survive. Rose's life insurance paid out $12,000. Barely enough to bury her and pay off our debts. I had my engineering salary, but it wasn't enough to pay rent and childcare and everything else a baby needed. I went back to my parents in Birmingham for a few months, but there was no work there, no future. So I came back to Atlanta, got a second job doing maintenance work at night while my neighbor Mrs. Patterson watched Daniel, and I did what black men have always done. I survived. I worked. I sacrificed. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years. Engineering during the day, maintenance work at night, sometimes doing weekend work at construction sites during the holidays. I saved every penny I could, bought a small 2-bedroom house in East Point in 1989, paid it off in 18 years by making double payments whenever I could. Daniel was my whole world. Everything I did was for him, to give him the opportunities one never had, to make sure Rose's son grew up to be the man his mother would have been proud of. Daniel had new school clothes every year. He had books, so many books, because I wanted him to love reading like Rose did. He had a basketball hoop in the driveway because he loved the game. He went to summer camp. He took piano lessons. And he was a good boy, my Daniel. Smart, respectful, kind. He made straight A's in school. He said yes sir and no sir. He went to church with me every Sunday and sang in the youth choir. He helped me around the house without being asked. He was everything a father could want in a son. I was so proud of him when he graduated high school in 2000, valedictorian of his class, with a full scholarship to Morehouse College. My baby was going to one of the best historically black colleges in the country, was going to get the education his mother had dreamed of for him. Dad, he said to me on graduation day, hugging me tight, everything you've done for me, all the sacrifices you made, I'm going to make you proud. I promise. And he did. He graduated from Morehouse in 2004 with a degree in business, got a good job at a marketing firm, started making more money than I had ever seen. He moved into a nice apartment in Buckhead, bought himself a car, started living the life I had worked so hard to give him. But something changed after college. Daniel started spending less time with me, started missing Sunday dinners, started being too busy to come by and visit. When I asked him about it, he said he was working hard, building his career, making a name for himself. I understood that. I had worked hard my whole life, so I understood ambition. Then in 2007, he met Amber. Amber Mitchell was a white girl from a wealthy family in Roswell, the kind of family that belonged to country clubs and had a second home in Florida. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships. Her mother was on the boards of half a dozen charities. They had money, real money, the kind of money that people like me only saw on television. Daniel brought her to meet me for Sunday dinner, and I could tell within 5 minutes that she thought she was better than me. The way she looked at my modest house, my old furniture, my kitchen that hadn't been updated since 1995. The way she picked at the food I had spent hours cooking, pushed my greens around her plate like they were poison. This is very traditional, she said in that voice that said traditional meant backward, outdated, beneath her. But Daniel loved her and I wanted my son to be happy, so I tried. Lord knows I tried. I smiled when Amber made little comments about my neighborhood not being safe. I bit my tongue when she suggested I might want to update my wardrobe before meeting her parents. I said nothing when she and Daniel got engaged after only 6 months of dating, and I wasn't included in any of the wedding planning. Their wedding in 2008 was a spectacle. 300 guests at some fancy country club in Roswell, with flowers that probably cost more than I made in 3 months and a band that had played at the governor's daughter's wedding. I was given a seat in the back, away from Amber's family and their society friends. When people asked who I was, Amber's mother would say, "Oh, that's Daniel's father," in a tone that suggested I was an unfortunate relative they had to invite out of obligation. I wore my best suit, a navy blue suit I had bought at Macy's on sale. I had gotten a fresh haircut at a nice barbershop, spent money I didn't really have because I wanted to look good for my son's wedding. But when I saw Amber's family in their expensive designer suits and jewelry, I felt small and out of place and ashamed, even though I had no reason to be ashamed. Daniel barely spoke to me that day. He was so caught up in Amber and her world, so desperate to fit in with her family, that he seemed to forget I existed. We took one photo together, one single photo of the two of us, and then he was gone, swept up in the wedding festivities while I sat at my table in the back and watched my son drift further away from me. After the wedding, things got worse. Daniel and Amber bought a big house in Alpharetta, in one of those gated communities where the houses all look the same and everyone drives luxury cars. They invited me over exactly twice in the first year, both times for major holidays when they couldn't avoid it without looking heartless. I tried to build a relationship with Amber, really tried. I called her to ask if she wanted to have lunch, but she was always too busy. I sent her birthday cards and Christmas gifts, but she never acknowledged them. I offered to help when they were remodeling their kitchen, and she laughed and said they had hired professionals, as if I had offered to do the work myself with my bare hands. Daniel made excuses for her. Dad, Amber's just stressed with her job. Dad, Amber's not used to a big family. Dad, Amber doesn't mean to be rude. She just has a different communication style. Different communication style. That's what he called it when his wife treated his father like hired help. In 2010, I retired from engineering after 30 years. I had my pension, my house was paid off, and I was looking forward to spending more time with my son and maybe traveling a little, doing some of the things I had always wanted to do but never had time for. I called Daniel to tell him about my retirement, expecting him to be happy for me, maybe want to take me out to celebrate. Instead, he said, "That's great, Dad. Listen, I have to go. We're meeting Amber's parents for dinner." Always Amber's parents. Never my Sunday dinners. Never just coming by to see how I was doing. Always Amber's family, Amber's friends, Amber's world. I felt myself becoming invisible in my own son's life, felt the distance growing between us like a canyon I couldn't cross. And when I tried to talk to him about it, tried to tell him I missed him and wanted to spend more time with him, he got defensive. "Dad, I'm not a child anymore. I have my own life, my own family. You need to respect that. My own family." As if I wasn't his family. As if I wasn't the man who had raised him alone, who had worked 2 jobs for 15 years to give him everything he needed, who had sacrificed every dream I ever had so he could live his. In 2012, Amber's father offered Daniel a position at one of his car dealerships, managing the marketing department. The money was excellent, more than Daniel had been making at his marketing firm. But I could see what was happening. Amber's family was buying my son, making him dependent on them, pulling him deeper into their world where I didn't belong. "Dad, this is a great opportunity," Daniel said when he told me about the job. "I'd be making twice what I make now, and we'd be working to build the family business." The family business. Amber's family business. Not our family. "What about your own dreams, Daniel? You always wanted to start your own marketing company. Be your own boss." "That's not realistic, Dad. This is a sure thing, stable income, room to grow. You should be happy for me." I was happy he had opportunities. But I mourned the loss of the boy who had hugged me on graduation day and promised to make me proud, who had talked about building his own legacy, not marrying into someone else's. Over the years, I watched my son change. He started talking differently, using Amber's vocabulary and Amber's phrases. He started caring about things that had never mattered to him before, like which country club to join and what kind of car had the most status. He started making subtle comments about my neighborhood, suggesting I should move somewhere safer, which really meant somewhere whiter and richer. And he stopped coming to church. That hurt more than anything. We had gone to church together every Sunday for his entire childhood, had prayed together, had found strength together in our faith community. But Amber thought church was old-fashioned and unnecessary, and Daniel stopped coming. "Dad, we're just not religious people," he said when I asked him about it. When did Daniel become a we? That didn't include me. I tried to be patient. I tried to be understanding. I told myself he was building his life and I needed to give him space. But it hurt. Lord, it hurt to watch my son become someone I barely recognized, to be pushed further and further to the margins of his life. In 2015, Daniel called me on a Wednesday evening, which was unusual because he never just called to talk anymore. Dad, I need to ask you for something. My heart lifted. Maybe he needed my advice, my help with something. Maybe he was finally reaching out to me. Amber and I want to buy a bigger house. We found the perfect place, but we're a little short on the down payment. Could you help us out? Maybe $30,000. $30,000. Almost half of my retirement savings, money I had put aside over decades of hard work and sacrifice. Daniel, that's a lot of money. That's my security. My nest egg for when I get older and might need help. Dad, we'd pay you back. And think about it, a bigger house means more room for when you visit. We'd have a guest room just for you. A guest room. In a house I would help pay for. So I could visit my own son like I was a stranger passing through. But he was my son, my only child, and I wanted him to be happy. I wanted to believe he would pay me back, that this would bring us closer together. So I took $30,000 out of my savings and gave it to him. They bought a 5-bedroom house with a pool in an exclusive neighborhood in Alpharetta. I was invited over exactly once to see it, and Amber made sure to tell me which furniture not to touch because it was expensive and imported from Italy. They never paid me back. Not $1. When I mentioned it 6 months later, carefully, not wanting to seem like I was demanding anything, Daniel said, Dad, we've had a lot of expenses with the new house. We'll pay you back when we can. When they could. It had been 9 years now, and they still hadn't been able to pay me back $30,000. Even though they took vacations to Europe and drove cars that cost more than my house. In 2018, Amber's mother Gloria started making comments to me at family gatherings, the few times I was invited to them. Little cutting remarks about my clothes, my accent, the way I talked. Walter, dear, you really should let me take you shopping. I know some wonderful boutiques that could really update your look. Walter, is that a southern thing, the way you say that word? It's so charming. Charming. The way white people say charming when they mean ignorant. But I smiled and took it because I didn't want to cause problems for Daniel. Didn't want to give Amber any excuse to push me even further out of their lives. Then in 2020, during the pandemic, something shifted. I didn't see Daniel for 8 months. 8 months. He called occasionally, always briefly, always with Amber in the background telling him they had to go. He said they were being careful, staying isolated, couldn't risk exposure. But I saw the photos on Facebook, saw them at Amber's parents' house for holidays, saw them at dinners with Amber's family. They weren't isolated. They just didn't want to be around me. When I confronted Daniel about it, he got angry. Dad, that's different. Amber's parents have been very careful. And honestly, your neighborhood has had a lot of COVID cases. We can't risk it. My neighborhood. My black neighborhood in East Point as opposed to their white neighborhood in Alpharetta. He didn't say it, but I heard it loud and clear. After the pandemic, I thought maybe things would get better. Maybe we could rebuild our relationship. But instead, in early 2023, Daniel called with news. Dad, Amber's pregnant. We're going to have a baby. I burst into tears right there on the phone. A grandchild. A baby. Someone new to love. A fresh start for our family. Oh, Daniel, son. That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. When is she due? September. Dad, listen, Amber has some specific ideas about how she wants things handled during the pregnancy and after the baby is born. She's going to need a lot of support from her family, so we might not be able to see you as much for a while. The happiness drained out of me like water through a sieve. Even now, even with a baby coming, I was being pushed aside. I want to be there for you both, Daniel. I want to help however I can. I appreciate that, Dad. We'll let you know what we need. Over the months of Amber's pregnancy, I barely heard from them. I sent gifts for the baby, called to check on how Amber was feeling, offered to help with whatever they needed. Every offer was declined or ignored. The baby shower was at Amber's parents' house, a lavish affair with 50 guests. I was invited, but only after Amber's mother Gloria called me to say, "Walter, I suppose you should be there since you're the baby's grandfather," even though Amber's really only comfortable with her close friends and family. Even though, as if I wasn't family. I went to that baby shower and smiled while Amber opened gifts worth thousands of dollars from her friends and family. I had bought a handmade wooden toy chest, spent weeks building it myself in my garage because I wanted my grandbaby to have something made with love by her grandfather's hands. When Amber saw it, she looked at it for maybe 5 seconds and said, "How quaint," before setting it aside. Quaint. My love was quaint. I went home that day and sat in my living room for 3 hours, just staring at the walls, thinking about the relationship I didn't have with my son, about the daughter-in-law who treated me like I was beneath her, about the grandbaby who would grow up not knowing me because her mother couldn't see past the color of my skin and the size of my bank account. When Amber went into labor on September 10th, Daniel called me from the hospital. "Dad, the baby's coming. We're at Northside Hospital." I dropped everything and drove to that hospital, my hands gripping the steering wheel tight with excitement and nervousness. My grandbaby was being born. I was going to meet her, hold her, start building a relationship with her. I got to the hospital at 3 p.m. The baby, Grace Alexandria Washington, was born at 4:47 p.m. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect in every way. I waited in the waiting room with Amber's entire family. Her parents, her sister and brother, her grandparents, her aunt and uncle, her cousins. 20 people from Amber's side. Just me from Daniel's. They all went back to see the baby before me. Every single one of them. I sat in that waiting room for 3 hours, watching Amber's family go back in groups, hearing their laughter and excitement, seeing the photos they took on their phones. Finally, at 8 p.m., Daniel came out to get me. He looked exhausted but happy, and for a moment he looked like my little boy again. "Dad, come meet your granddaughter." I followed him back to the room, my hands shaking with anticipation. When I walked in, Amber was sitting up in the hospital bed, looking tired but glowing. Her mother Gloria was sitting in a chair beside her. Her father Rick was standing by the window, and her sister Jessica was holding baby Grace, cooing at her softly. "Amber," Daniel said, "Dad's here to meet Grace." Amber looked at me, and something cold passed across her face. Something I had seen before but never quite so clearly. Pure contempt. "Oh," she said flatly. I moved closer to the bed, my arms already reaching out, ready to hold my first grandchild. This baby I had been waiting months to meet. "Can I hold her?" I asked Jessica, Daniel's sister-in-law, the woman who had no blood connection to this child but had been holding her for the past 10 minutes. Jessica looked at Amber, waiting for permission. Amber's mouth tightened. "Actually, Walter, I'm not ready for a lot of people to hold Grace yet. She just was born and she needs to bond with immediate family first." Immediate family. I was the baby's grandfather. How was I not immediate family? "Amber," Daniel said softly, "Dad just wants to hold her for a minute." And I said, "No, Daniel. My mother and father and sister are here to support me. Your father can meet Grace when we're ready." The words hung in the air like poison gas. Gloria smirked. Rick looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Jessica kept holding the baby, not meeting my eyes. "I'm her grandfather," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just want to hold her." Amber sat up straighter, and her voice got that edge to it, that sharp tone she used when she was about to say something cruel. "You're Daniel's father, yes, but you're not family to us. You haven't been part of our lives in any meaningful way. You live in a different world than we do. Frankly, I'm not comfortable with Grace being around your neighborhood, your lifestyle, your people. Your people." There it was. The truth that had been lurking under every interaction, every slight, every exclusion for the past 16 years. I wasn't part of their family because I was black and poor and didn't belong to their country club and their world. The room went completely silent. Daniel looked like he had been slapped. Even Gloria looked shocked at Amber saying it out loud. "Amber," Daniel started, his voice weak. "No, Daniel. I'm tired of pretending. Your father has never fit in with our family. He's never made an effort to be part of our world. And I don't want Grace confused about who her real family is. My parents are going to be the primary grandparents. They have the resources, the connections, the lifestyle that will benefit Grace. Your father can visit occasionally when we think it's appropriate, but he needs to understand his place. His place. I needed to understand my place. I looked at my son, waiting for him to defend me, to tell his wife she was out of line, to stand up for the man who had sacrificed everything for him. But Daniel just stood there, looking at the floor, his face twisted with discomfort, but his mouth staying shut. He had made his choice, and it wasn't me. I walked out of that hospital room with what little dignity I had left. I walked past the nurse's station, past the waiting room where I had sat for 3 hours, past the gift shop where I had bought a teddy bear for Grace that would never be given to her. I got to my car in the parking garage and I fell apart. I sat there behind the wheel and sobbed like I hadn't cried since Rose died. 40 years of sacrifice. 40 years of working 2 jobs and going without and putting my son first in everything. And this was what it got me. Being told I wasn't family to my own grandchild. I drove home in a daze, barely seeing the road through my tears. When I got to my house, the house I had worked so hard to buy and pay off, it felt empty and cold and meaningless. What had it all been for? What had any of it been for if my own son could stand there and let his wife treat me like I was nothing? I called my brother Thomas in Birmingham, and I told him everything while my voice cracked and broke. He listened, and finally he said what I needed to hear. "Walter, that boy has forgotten where he came from. He's forgotten what you did for him. He's let that woman and her money turn him into somebody Rose wouldn't even recognize. What do I do, Thomas? He's my son. She's my grandbaby. I can't just walk away." "Can't you?" "Brother, they've already walked away from you. They've been walking away for years. You've just been too stubborn to see it. Sometimes you have to let people go, even when it breaks your heart, because holding on to people who don't want you is worse than being alone." I knew he was right, but knowing something and accepting it are 2 different things. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the hospital, every cruel word Amber had said, every second that Daniel had stood there silent while his wife humiliated his father. And something inside me changed. Something hard and cold and determined settled into my chest where my heart used to be. I was done begging for crumbs from my son's table. I was done being treated like I should be grateful for whatever minimal contact they allowed me. I was done being ashamed of who I was, where I came from, what I had accomplished with nothing but hard work and love. If they didn't want me in their lives, fine. But they weren't going to just push me aside and take everything while giving nothing. They owed me $30,000 and I was going to get it back. More than that, I was going to make sure they understood exactly what they had thrown away. The next morning I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but Leonard Morrison, a black attorney I had known for years through church, a man who specialized in family law and had a reputation for fighting hard for his clients. "Leonard," I said when he answered, "I need help. My son and his wife owe me $30,000, and I want to sue them for it. We met that afternoon in his office. I brought every piece of documentation I had. The bank records showing the withdrawal of $30,000. The email from Daniel asking for the money and promising to pay me back. The texts over the years where I had mentioned the loan and he had acknowledged it. Leonard reviewed everything carefully, his expression growing grimmer with each page. When he was done, he looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and anger. "Walter, you have a solid case for repayment. This is a clear loan that was never repaid. But I want you to understand what suing your son is going to mean. This will probably destroy whatever relationship you have left." "Leonard, there is no relationship left. His wife told me yesterday at the hospital that I'm not family to them, that I don't fit in their world, that my grandbaby doesn't need to be around my people. She said this in front of her whole family, and my son stood there and said nothing." Leonard's jaw clenched. He was a 65-year-old black man who had grown up in Alabama during segregation, who had fought his whole life against exactly the kind of prejudice Amber had displayed. "Then we're going to make them pay, Walter. And not just the money. We're going to make sure they understand they can't treat people this way, especially not the man who gave everything for that boy." We filed the lawsuit 3 days later. Daniel and Amber were served with papers at their home in Alpharetta, a process server delivering the formal notice that Walter Washington was suing them for $30,000 plus interest and legal fees. Daniel called me 30 minutes after being served, and he was furious. "Dad, what are you doing? You're suing me? Your own son." "I'm recovering money that's owed to me, Daniel. Money you promised to pay back and never did. I can't believe you would do this to me, to our family. Over money? This isn't about money, Daniel. This is about respect. This is about standing up for myself after years of being treated like I don't matter. And it's about you learning that there are consequences when you let your wife treat your father like garbage." Amber didn't mean what she said at the hospital. She was tired and emotional from giving birth. "Don't you dare make excuses for her, Daniel." She meant every word. She's felt that way for 16 years. She just finally said it out loud. And you stood there and let her because you're more concerned with keeping her happy than honoring the man who raised you. "Dad." "No, Daniel. You listen to me now. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to give you everything you needed. I went without so you could have. I sacrificed my dreams, my social life, my own chance at finding love again because all my energy went into raising you right. And you've spent the last 16 years pushing me further and further away because I don't fit in with your wife's rich white family. That's not fair. Your mother would be ashamed of you. Rose Washington worked hard and died young, but she died with her dignity and her principles. You've sold yours for a big house and country club membership." I hung up before he could respond, before I could hear his voice break or listen to more excuses. I was done making things easy for him. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Amber's father Rick called Leonard's office and tried to bully him into dropping the case, suggesting that a lawsuit against his daughter and son-in-law would be bad for my future relationship with the family. Leonard's response was perfect. "Mr. Mitchell, your daughter has made it clear that Mr. Washington is not considered family, so there's no relationship to damage. We'll see you in court." Amber's mother Gloria called me directly, which violated Leonard's instructions that all communication go through him. "Walter, this is so unnecessary. If you needed money, you should have just asked. We could have helped you out instead of you embarrassing yourself and Daniel with this trashy lawsuit." Trashy. She called me trashy for legally recovering money that was owed to me. "Gloria, I didn't need to ask for money. I need to be repaid money I loaned. There's a difference. And I'm sorry you think standing up for myself is embarrassing. But I come from people who taught me to have a backbone." She sputtered and hung up on me. The next person to call was Daniel's boss, who was Amber's father. He left a message saying he was disappointed in me for causing problems for Daniel, and that this kind of drama could affect Daniel's position at the company. Leonard was livid when I told him, "They're threatening his job because you're exercising your legal rights? Oh, this just gets better and better. We're adding harassment to the complaint." Through all of this, I heard nothing from Daniel directly. He communicated only through lawyers, which broke my heart even as I told myself I was doing the right thing. But I had allies I hadn't expected. My church family rallied around me completely. When word got out about what had happened at the hospital, about Amber's comments and the lawsuit, people I had known for decades stepped up to support me. Brother Jenkins, who had been my friend for 30 years, came by my house with food and righteous anger. "Walter, I am so sorry about what that woman said to you, and shame on Daniel for allowing it. You raised him better than that." "I thought I did, Brother Jenkins. I don't know where I went wrong." "You didn't go wrong, man. He went wrong. He let money and status turn him into somebody who forgot his raising. But you standing up for yourself? That's right. That's what we taught our children to do. Never let anybody make you feel less than." Pastor Reynolds called me into his office one Sunday after service. He was 72 years old, had been our pastor for 30 years, had baptized Daniel when he was 12 years old. "Brother Walter, I want you to know the church supports you completely in this. What happened to you is unconscionable. That young woman disrespected you in the worst way possible. And Daniel's silence was a betrayal of everything we believe about honoring your parents. Thank you, Pastor. I've been worried people would think I'm being vindictive, suing my own son." "Vindictive? No. Vindictive would be trying to hurt him for no reason. You're seeking justice, seeking what's rightfully yours. There's a difference. And frankly, Daniel needs to learn this lesson. He needs to understand that turning his back on his father has consequences." The lawsuit moved forward. We had a mediation session scheduled for 6 weeks after the initial filing, a chance for both sides to negotiate a settlement before going to trial. Leonard prepared me thoroughly, warned me that Daniel and Amber would probably try to make me feel guilty, try to manipulate me into dropping the case. "Walter, stay strong. Remember why you're doing this. Not just for the money, but for your dignity, your self-respect. Don't let them make you feel like you're wrong for standing up for yourself." The mediation was held at Leonard's office on a Wednesday afternoon in November. Daniel and Amber arrived with their lawyer, a slick-looking white man named Parker Hutchins who specialized in defending wealthy clients. It was the first time I had seen Daniel in person since the hospital, and it hurt to look at him. He looked tired, older, stressed, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Amber, on the other hand, looked at me with pure contempt. She was dressed in expensive clothes, designer labels I recognized from seeing them in stores I couldn't afford, jewelry that cost more than I made in a year. She sat down across from me with a smirk that said she thought she was going to win this. Mr. Hutchins started by suggesting this whole thing was a misunderstanding. "Mr. Washington, my clients acknowledge that you provided financial assistance for their home purchase. However, their understanding was that this was a gift, not a loan. Surely a father would want to help his son without expecting repayment." Leonard didn't let me answer. "My client has documentation showing this was explicitly a loan. Mr. Daniel Washington sent an email asking to borrow the money and promising repayment. That's not a gift, that's a loan." "Be that as it may," Mr. Hutchins continued, "my clients are willing to offer a settlement of $15,000 to resolve this matter and maintain family harmony. Half. They were offering me half of what they owed." Leonard looked at me. I shook my head firmly. "My client is seeking the full $30,000 plus interest accrued over 9 years at the legal rate, plus attorney's fees. That comes to approximately $42,000 total." Amber laughed, actually laughed out loud. "That's ridiculous. We're not paying that." Then we'll see you in court, Leonard said calmly. Wait, Daniel said, speaking for the first time. He looked at me finally, and I saw pain in his eyes. Dad, please, can't we work this out? $42,000 is a lot of money. We have a new baby, expenses. Can't you be reasonable? Reasonable. The word came out sharper than I intended. Daniel, I was reasonable for 9 years while you never paid me back a single dollar. I was reasonable when your wife excluded me from your lives. I was reasonable when I wasn't invited to family gatherings. I was even reasonable at the hospital when Amber told me I wasn't family. But you know what happened when I was reasonable? I got walked all over. So no, I'm done being reasonable. Amber leaned forward, her eyes cold. You know what this is really about? You're jealous. You're jealous that we have a nice life, that we're successful, that our daughter is going to grow up with every advantage. You're bitter that you stayed poor while we made something of ourselves. The words were designed to hurt, to make me ashamed. But instead of shame, I felt a clarity so pure it was almost liberating. Amber, I'm not jealous of your money or your big house or your country club membership. I'm sad that my son married someone who thinks those things matter more than character and family and basic human decency. I'm sad that he's become the kind of man who lets his wife disrespect his father and doesn't say a word. And I'm sad that my granddaughter is going to grow up learning those same values, thinking money makes you better than other people. How dare you? I dare because I'm her grandfather, even if you refuse to acknowledge it. I dare because I raised a better man than the one sitting in front of me right now. I dare because I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to give my son opportunities, and I will not be treated like garbage because I don't have millions in the bank. Daniel's face crumbled. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who hugged me and told me I was the best dad in the world. Dad, I'm sorry. For all of it. For not standing up for you at the hospital. For letting Amber say those things. For not paying you back the money. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't change what happened, Daniel. Sorry doesn't give me back the relationship with my granddaughter. Sorry doesn't erase 16 years of being treated like I'm not good enough. What do you want from me? His voice broke. What do I have to do to make this right? Pay me what you owe me. Acknowledge that what Amber said was wrong. Stand up to your wife and tell her that I am family, that I will be part of Grace's life, that she doesn't get to exclude me because of her prejudice. Amber stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Prejudice? How dare you accuse me of prejudice? This has nothing to do with race. Doesn't it? I stood up too, facing her directly. You told me in that hospital room that you weren't comfortable with my granddaughter being around my neighborhood, my lifestyle, my people. What did you mean by my people, Amber? Say it out loud. Tell everyone in this room what you really meant. Her face went pale, then red. She knew she had been caught, knew that everyone in the room had heard the racism in her words, even if she hadn't explicitly said the words. I meant your economic situation, your neighborhood has crime. My neighborhood is a good, working-class neighborhood full of good people. People who work hard and take care of their families and look out for each other. But to you, it's not good enough because it's black and it's not rich. And neither am I. Leonard interjected before Amber could respond. I think we're done here. My client's terms are clear. $42,000, full acknowledgement of the loan, and a written agreement that Mr. Washington will have regular access to his granddaughter, or we go to trial. We'll go to trial then, Mr. Hutchins said, gathering his papers. And I'll warn you, Mr. Washington, trials are expensive and emotionally draining. You might win the money, but you'll definitely lose whatever relationship remains with your son. The relationship was already lost, I said quietly. I'm just fighting for what's mine. They left, Amber storming out first, Daniel following behind her like a whipped dog, and I sat back down feeling exhausted but also strangely liberated. I had said what I needed to say. I had stood my ground. Whatever happened next, I had my dignity. Leonard sat down beside me. "Walter, that was perfect. You handled yourself with grace and strength. And more importantly, you made your son face the truth about what he's become. Do you think it'll make a difference? I don't know. But win or lose, you've shown him who you really are. Now he has to decide who he wants to be." The trial was scheduled for 3 months later in February. In the meantime, life went on. I spent Thanksgiving with my brother Thomas and his family in Birmingham. The first Thanksgiving I hadn't spent with Daniel in 32 years. It hurt, but it also felt like freedom, being with people who loved and appreciated me instead of tolerating me out of obligation. Christmas was harder. I bought gifts for Grace, little baby clothes and toys, wrapped them carefully, and put them in my closet because I had nowhere to send them. I looked at the photos Amber posted on social media, pictures of Grace's first Christmas. All of Amber's family gathered around, and I felt a pain in my chest that wouldn't go away. But I also found new purpose. I started volunteering at a community center in my neighborhood, helping mentor young men whose fathers weren't around like I had been for Daniel. I joined a men's group at church. I started taking better care of myself, went to the gym regularly, got my blood pressure under control, bought myself some new clothes. "You're looking good, Brother Walter," Pastor Reynolds told me one Sunday. "Looks like standing up for yourself agrees with you." "I spent 40 years putting everyone else first, Pastor. Feels good to finally put myself on the list." 2 weeks before the trial, I got an unexpected visitor. It was 7 p.m. on a Tuesday evening when my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Daniel standing on my porch, alone. I almost didn't open the door, but curiosity and that stubborn paternal instinct that never quite dies made me turn the lock. "Dad," he said when I opened the door. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside and let him in. He walked into the living room like he was seeing it for the first time in years. Maybe he was really seeing it, seeing the home I had made, the life I had built. "You changed things," he said, looking at the new paint I had done, the updated furniture I had bought for myself. "People change, Daniel. Houses change. Life moves on." He sat down on the sofa, and I sat in my chair across from him, keeping distance between us. "Dad, I came to tell you something. I'm leaving Amber." The words hung in the air between us. I had expected many things from this visit, but not this. "What?" "I'm leaving her. I'm filing for divorce. I've already moved out, staying with a friend until I can find my own place." "Daniel, what happened?" He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Everything happened. After the mediation, we had the biggest fight we've ever had. I told her what she said to you was wrong, that the way she's treated you for years was wrong. She said I was being ridiculous, that you were being unreasonable, that I needed to choose between her and you. And you chose her. You always choose her. That's what I thought I would do. That's what I've always done. But then Grace woke up crying and I went to get her and I was holding my daughter and I thought about you. About how you raised me alone, worked 2 jobs, sacrificed everything. And I thought about what kind of man I want to be for Grace. What kind of example I want to set." Tears were running down his face now. "I don't want her to grow up thinking it's okay to treat people the way Amber treats people. I don't want her to learn that money and status matter more than character and kindness. I don't want her to be ashamed of where she comes from or think she's better than other people because she has advantages." "Daniel, let me finish, Dad. Please. I've spent 16 years becoming someone I don't recognize. Someone who let his wife disrespect his father. Someone who took your money and never paid it back. Someone who stood in a hospital room and said nothing while you were told you weren't family. I'm ashamed, Dad. I'm so ashamed of who I've become." I wanted to go to him, to hold him like I did when he was a little boy and the world felt too big and scary. But I stayed in my chair, because this was something he needed to work through, something I couldn't fix for him. What did Amber say when you told her you were leaving? She laughed at first, said I was being dramatic. Then when she realized I was serious, she threatened me. Said she'd take Grace and I'd never see her. Said her father would fire me and make sure I never worked in Atlanta again. Said she'd tell everyone I was mentally unstable and get a restraining order. Can she do those things? Some of them, maybe. Her father did fire me or strongly suggested I resign, which is the same thing. And she's already filed for full custody, claiming I abandoned her and the baby. But I talked to a lawyer, a good one, and he says because I left to stay with a friend and I've been seeing Grace regularly and paying support, it's not abandonment. It's separation. You're seeing Grace? He nodded. 3 times a week, supervised by Amber's mother at their house. It's humiliating, but it's the only way Amber will let me see her right now. But Dad, my lawyer says I have a good chance at joint custody. Amber can't just cut me out because I finally stood up to her. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know I'm trying. I'm trying to be the man you and Mom raised me to be. I'm trying to fix what I broke. And I want to ask if you can forgive me. Not right away, I don't expect that. But eventually, if I can prove to you that I've changed. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He looked broken and lost and scared, but he also looked more honest than he had in years. More like the boy I raised than the man he had become. Daniel, I never stopped loving you. Even when I was hurt and angry and felt betrayed, I never stopped loving you because you're my son. But love and trust are different things. You broke my trust. You let me down. And fixing that is going to take more than words. I know. That's why I came here to tell you I'm dropping my defense in the lawsuit. I'm going to pay you the full $42,000. It's going to take me a few months because I lost my job and I'm paying child support and lawyers, but I'm going to pay you everything I owe you. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because it's the right thing to do. Because you deserve to be paid back 9 years ago. Because I need to start taking responsibility for my choices instead of making excuses. We sat in silence for a while, and I could feel something shifting between us, some small crack in the wall that had been built up over 16 years. I want to see Grace, I said finally. I'm her grandfather. I should be part of her life. I want that too, Dad. But right now, with the custody battle, everything is complicated. Amber's lawyer is using everything against me, including my relationship with you. They're saying I'm too close to you, that you're a bad influence because you filed a lawsuit, that Grace shouldn't be around that kind of conflict. That kind of conflict. The kind where someone stands up for themselves. I know it's wrong, but if I push too hard right now about you seeing Grace, it could hurt my custody case. Can you wait? Just until the custody agreement is settled? Then I promise, I will make sure you're part of her life. It wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted to meet my granddaughter now, hold her now, start building a relationship now. But I understood the reality of the situation. How long? My lawyer thinks we'll have a temporary agreement in 2 months, a final one in 6 months. After that, what I say about who sees Grace on my time is my business, not Amber's. 6 months. Half a year to wait to meet my granddaughter. But after everything, what was 6 more months? Okay, Daniel, I'll wait. But I'm holding you to that promise. I won't let you down again, Dad. I swear it. He left a few minutes later, and I sat in my living room processing everything. My son was leaving his wife. My son was finally standing up for what was right. My son was trying to come back to me. It wasn't the ending I had imagined, but maybe it was a beginning. 2 days later, Leonard called me. Walter, I just got notice from Daniel's lawyer. He's conceding the case. agreeing to pay the full $42,000 in monthly installments over 2 years. We won. We won. But victory felt complicated, bittersweet. Yes, I was getting my money back. Yes, I had stood up for myself. But the cost had been high. My family was fractured. My relationship with Daniel was damaged. And I still hadn't met my granddaughter. What happens now? I asked Leonard. Now we get a court order for the payment plan, make sure everything's legally binding. And then you move forward with your life, Walter. You did what you had to do. You got justice. Justice. It was what I had wanted, what I had fought for. But it felt hollow without my family intact. Over the next few months, Daniel paid his monthly installments faithfully, $500 a month transferred to my account on the first of each month. He also called me once a week, started coming by on Sundays for dinner, slowly rebuilding our relationship. It was awkward at first. We didn't know how to talk to each other anymore, didn't know what was safe to discuss. But gradually we found our rhythm. He told me about his new job at a different marketing firm, about his apartment, about his therapy sessions where he was working through the guilt and shame of the last 16 years. I told him about my volunteer work, about the men's group at church, about learning to live for myself instead of always putting others first. We talked about Rose sometimes, about memories from when Daniel was young, about the woman his mother had been. She would have been disappointed in me, Daniel said one Sunday over my pot roast. Yes, she would have. But she also would have been proud that you finally found your way back. The custody battle was brutal. Amber fought him on everything, tried to paint him as an unfit father, dug up every mistake he had ever made. But Daniel had a good lawyer and he showed up for every hearing, every mediation, every evaluation. He proved he was committed to being a father. The temporary custody agreement gave him grace every other weekend and one evening a week. It wasn't as much as he wanted, but it was a start. And true to his word, once he had that legal right to determine who saw Grace during his time, he called me. Dad, can you come over next Saturday? I want you to meet Grace. Properly this time. I showed up at Daniel's apartment at 10 a.m. on a Saturday in May, 8 months after Grace had been born. I had barely slept the night before, nervous and excited and scared that she wouldn't like me, that too much time had passed. Daniel opened the door holding Grace, who was now 8 months old, sitting up and looking around with curious brown eyes. She was beautiful, with Daniel's features and lighter skin from Amber, a perfect blend of both her parents. Grace, Daniel said softly, this is your grandpa Walter, my dad, and he loves you very much. He handed her to me, and I held my granddaughter for the first time. She looked at me seriously for a moment, studying my face with those big eyes, and then she reached up and grabbed my nose, letting out a little laugh. I burst into tears right there in Daniel's doorway, tears of joy and relief and love so overwhelming I could barely breathe. This baby, this perfect little person was my family, my blood, my legacy continuing into the future. Hi, sweet baby, I whispered. I've been waiting so long to meet you. We spent the day together, the three of us. Daniel showed me all of Grace's toys, her favorite books, the way she liked to be held. I fed her lunch, changed her diaper, played peekaboo until she was giggling uncontrollably. And when she fell asleep in my arms that afternoon, I looked at Daniel with tears in my eyes. Thank you, I said, for this, for keeping your promise. Thank you for not giving up on me, Dad, for fighting for yourself even when it meant fighting me. You taught me the most important lesson, that real love means standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Over the next year, things slowly healed. I saw Grace every other weekend when Daniel had her, and sometimes during his weeknight visits too. I made her the wooden toy chest that Amber had rejected, filled it with toys, and Grace loved playing with it every time she was at Daniel's apartment. I sang her songs, read her books, and fell completely in love with her. Daniel continued paying me the money he owed, and when he had paid the full amount 2 years later, he took me out to dinner to celebrate. "I know it doesn't make up for the years of hurt," he said, "but at least I finally did the right thing." "You did more than that, Daniel. You became the man I always knew you could be." His divorce from Amber was finalized after 18 months of legal battles. They had joint custody, split 50-50, and while Amber made things difficult whenever she could, Daniel stood firm. He didn't let her bully him anymore, didn't let her dictate who could be in Grace's life when it was his time. Amber never apologized to me, never acknowledged the horrible things she had said. But she learned to tolerate my presence because Grace loved me, and even Amber couldn't completely deny her daughter a relationship with her grandfather without looking heartless. When Grace was 3 years old, she started asking questions about families. "Why do I have 2 houses? Why doesn't Daddy live with Mommy?" Daniel handled it with honesty. "Because sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. I made mistakes and Mommy and I couldn't fix them. But you have 2 families who love you very much." "And Grandpa Walter?" Grace asked. "Grandpa Walter is my dad, which makes him your grandpa. And he's very special because he never gave up on us, even when things were hard." "I love Grandpa Walter," Grace said simply. Those 4 words healed something in me I didn't even know was still broken. Now, 5 years after that terrible day in the hospital, I'm 73 years old. Grace is 5.5, smart and funny and full of life. She comes to my house every other weekend, helps me in my garden, learns to cook my recipes, listens to stories about her grandmother Rose who she never got to meet. Daniel and I have rebuilt our relationship, not the same as it was before, but something stronger because it's based on honesty instead of obligation. He's dating someone new, a teacher from his neighborhood, a black woman named Monica who treats me with respect and includes me in their plans. She's different from Amber, Daniel told me when they had been dating for 6 months. She values the same things I do: family, character, treating people right. I'm not making the same mistake twice. I still live in my house in East Point, the house I worked so hard to buy and keep. But it doesn't feel empty anymore. It's filled with Grace's laughter on weekends, with Sunday dinners where Daniel and Monica come over, with friends from church and the community center. I think about that day in the hospital sometimes, about Amber saying I wasn't family, about the pain of being rejected by my own son. But I also think about how standing up for myself changed everything. How refusing to accept being treated as less than led to getting my dignity back, my money back, and eventually my relationship with my son back. And I think about Grace, about the kind of woman she's going to become. She's growing up knowing both sides of her family, learning that people come from different places and backgrounds, that character matters more than money. She's learning from my example that you don't let people walk over you, that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Last week, Grace was playing at my house when she said something that made me stop in my tracks. "Grandpa, when I grow up, I want to be strong like you." "What do you mean, baby?" "Daddy says you're the strongest person he knows. He says you worked really hard and never gave up and you taught him how to be strong too." I looked at my granddaughter, this beautiful child who was learning the lessons I had learned the hard way, and I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. "Baby girl, being strong doesn't mean you never get hurt. It means you keep going even when things hurt. It means you stand up for what's right even when it's scary. And it means you never let anyone make you feel small, no matter who they are or how much money they have. Like when Mama tries to say mean things about you?" My heart clenched. "What does she say?" "She says you're not as good as Grandma Gloria and Grandpa Rick because they have a big house. But I think you're better because you make me cookies and play with me, and you don't care about having fancy stuff." Out of the mouths of babes, the absolute truth. Your mama's grandparents love you very much, and they show it in their way. I show it in my way. What matters is that you're loved, baby girl. I know, Grandpa, and I love you the most. Those words, that innocent declaration from a 5-year-old who didn't know how much they meant, made every moment of pain worth it. I'm 73 years old. My daughter-in-law told me I wasn't family. She tried to exclude me from my granddaughter's life because I wasn't rich enough, white enough, good enough for their world. But I fought back. I stood up for myself. I sued my own son to get back what was mine, not just the money but my dignity and self-respect. And in doing so, I saved my family. Not the family I thought I had, but the family we became when we were forced to face the truth and rebuild on a foundation of honesty instead of pretense. Some people might say I was wrong to sue my son, that family should forgive and move on. But I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold people accountable, make them face the consequences of their choices, force them to become better than they are. Daniel is a better man now than he was 5 years ago. He's a better father, a better son, a better person. And Grace is growing up with a grandfather who taught her that your worth isn't measured by your bank account or your zip code, but by your character and your courage. If you liked my story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you in advance. And you, what would you do in this person's place? I would love to hear your opinion, so please share it with me in the comments. I'm always curious about what you all think, and also write me where you're listening from. For more life stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. There are many other stories waiting for you. Stories about betrayal, redemption, and the strength we find when we refuse to let others define our worth. With heartfelt greetings, until next time.